Morning all. I'm about to show you a very sweet game here between John Ludvig Hammer, who at the time was around the same age as Magnus, is actually slightly younger, born in the same year, 1990. He was rated 2074, so below 2100, and Magnus had, according to chess games, quite a large FIDE rating at this time, 2450, and was also about 12 years old. Magnus playing black. Today, John Ludvig Hammer is a chess grandmaster. He is a friend and former classmate of Magnus Carlsen. He played in Norway's top board in the 17th European Team Championship in 2009 and finished with 6.5 out of 9 with a staggering 2792 performance, according to chessgames.com. And I've personally witnessed destroy lots of grandmasters in the London Chess Classic FIDE Open, which by the way is coming up in December. He did that a couple of years ago, and you can check out his game against Neil MacDonald on the channel if you do a search for Hammer and MacDonald on this channel. So let's see. Back then, the two child prodigies playing each other. Knight f3 from John Ludvig Hammer. So d6 from Magnus. After d4, knight f6. Now knight bd2, and we see g6, and white plays e4. So far so good. Looks fairly typical of a perk position. After bishop d3, both sides castle. Now we see knight c6, and white supports the centre with c3. Okay, e5, and white plays h3. It doesn't look as though this damages white's king safety too much. It prevents black using the g4 square. But maybe you might think, well, what about installing a knight on f4 here? Wouldn't that be more effective? So knight h5 for Magnus looks fairly logical actually, and it's putting pressure immediately on e5 as well. So white decides to do something about this pressure on d4. He plays d takes e5. Now, not the standard move you might expect here of a recapture, but an intermediary move, knight f4, installing the knight straight away on f4, and it's looking a little bit more dangerous now for the white king. Bishop b5, and now choosing to take on e5 with the knight, and white takes on e5, and again not a standard recapture move, but instead the weakness of the last move was not controlling g5 here, and Magnus pounces on that with queen g5. However, you might think, well, actually white can defend this and save the knight, and he does so with knight g4, but Magnus has seen he can take the bishop now, which he does. Okay, so black has got this light square bishop from white. It shouldn't be such a disaster though from here, one would expect. It is equal on pawns and pieces. Knight b3 hitting the knight. The knight goes all in with a check here. King h1. Okay, and this allows actually Magnus to double the pawns because it's interfering with the queen protecting g4. So bishop takes g4, h takes g4. Okay, but is the knight kind of trapped on e2? Where can it get out quite easily? It can't. But if the queen moved away immediately, there might be knight g3 as a tactic, exposing a discovered attack on the rook. So white has to be careful. Magnus plays rook a e8. And of course, this pawn cannot be defended with f3 because then knight g3 check. Again, winning material. So the move which John Ludvig Hammer played here was bishop e3. And it looks finally that the knight might indeed be trapped here, because surely now white is in a position to put more pressure on that pesky knight. So Magnus plays though rook takes e4, and now it's very tempting white's next move to try and win that knight. Surely the knight is trapped. What was Magnus thinking of? After rook e1, okay, can you spot black's next move if I give you 10 seconds? Or you might want to pause the video. So 10 seconds starting from now. Okay. Unfortunately for white, there's a fantastic resource here. Fantastic. Queen h5 check. And this causes immediate resignation. There's only one move that white can play here because the knight is stopping g1. So say g takes h5, which wasn't played, then rook h4 is mate with the rook and knight. So it shows Magnus's very keen tactical eye, and it looks as though at one point the knight was in trouble. Let's review that again, maybe with a little bit of an engine view as well of the game. So white was doing okay so far. Now maybe h3 was not necessary because it does provide black with a convenient way of getting to f4 with a potentially more effective knight. But on the other hand, the engine seems to like it now. So h3, so what is it intuitively about this which isn't so hot after knight h5? Why can't the knight just install itself? D takes e5 might not be the best, okay, because of knight f4, or not the case. No, it's about equal, But apparently for white to maintain a small edge, maybe d5 here might be preferred. Okay, but in the game d takes, we have knight f4. Now bishop b5, and all of a sudden black's equalised technically, actually, after knight takes e5. So here, knight takes e5, and again, the powerful move which Houdini likes is what Magnus plays, queen g5. No obvious recaptures. He's putting the opponent's moves under great scrutiny here, not assuming basic recaptures. Knight g4, and now picking up the light square bishop, which is now an opportunity to put the knight on e2 and give white double pawns, but you have to factor in the knight's got no way out. It seems, on the surface, it seems the knight is stranded on e2. White just has to be careful to avoid knight g3 checks. Like queen c2, knight g3 would be a disaster, losing the f1 rook. You know, for example, okay. But it's black to move, and Magnus plays rook a e8. Okay, the other option was, of course, at this point, to do something about the knight if it is doomed. So knight takes c1, of course, and black's still fine there. Should point that out. But rook a e8 gives the impression, hang on a sec, the knight's stranded surely. So bishop e3. But now, as Houdini knows and as Magnus knew, all is not what it seems after rook takes e4. This also means knight f4 is now on the cards to get the knight out. Rook e1 going straight into the mate in 2. Okay, splat. But as I say, both players, two of the few grandmasters which Norway have produced, and both child prodigies, very strong grandmasters. And this is when they were about 12 years old, back in 2003. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.